Atrios used to put on his blog all the time, like stupid or evil. Stupid or evil when you face these questions. And increasingly, I am coming to the conclusion that it's not really relevant. It's interesting to know whether or not people who push something like this are stupid or evil. It's interesting, but at the end of the day, it's largely irrelevant because they respond to the same stimuli. The solution to the stupidness is the same as the solution to the evilness. I'm obviously painting with a broad brush here, folks. But that is pushback. And it is pushback in the form of not just protests and petitions and whatnot, but also, electorally to a certain extent. I mean, I'm quite convinced that if we had 3 or 4 more progressive senators in the Senate, maybe 5, we would not be looking at fast track authority granted on that will ultimately allow for the TPP. Now, we also know, this cuts a couple of different ways, right? Because it seems to me that it's conceivable that if the deal is somehow closed now, I think that's either a 60 or 90-day timeline until it has to come before Congress. And if that's the case, and I don't know for sure, and I don't know if anybody knows, because I would imagine this is going to be manipulated. But the worst case scenario for proponents of this deal is that it comes before the Senate prior to Iowa or prior to New Hampshire. From the perspective of people who want this deal killed, of which I am one, to have it come up in the context of this particularly Republican presidential primary is key. Because Donald Trump has already said he's come out against it. Ted Cruz has already come out against it. You've got Rand Paul still in the race. I don't know if he still will be. But it could have some influence. I mean, Lindsey Graham's going to do what Lindsey Graham does. I mean, he's down at 1%. He doesn't even need to pretend. But it's going to be interesting because, one has to wonder even what happens in the House to a certain extent without Boehner there. I mean, this could get very interesting. On some level, I would almost rather it pass, it come up for a vote now, rather than sort of like meander down the road and come up, I don't know, over the summer when you've got, I don't know. Well, if it's Ted Cruz, it's Ted Cruz, but you really want this to get involved in Republican presidential primary politics if you want this thing scuttled. And really, short of, I'm sure that we have some industry attorneys or some people who listen to this program who are just itching for something like this. But beyond that, I imagine most of you also want this sunk because there's really no other reason for it other than if you're going to specifically make money off it, it seems to me.